Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Francisco Javier Rodriguez Garcia, though I go by the nickname of Franz Rogar in all my works, so please you maybe call me Franz. As the title of this workshop implies, I'm going to show you my quick photodiagramming workflow, and if we have enough time, I will play a video with showing the process in a real time, though I try to make it slower than my speed is. So in any case, I will upload both the presentation files and the video to a Gmail drive, a Google Drive, so you can download it. This would be a general workflow. We start with a photograph taken by our smartphone. Then we go cleaning it in some way we are going to explain later. Then draw on top of it, if needed, diagrams, arrows, or any kind of information, and then export it to a PDF. I'm going to divide the talk into 4 sections: hardware and software, photographing, some techniques, and the 2 programs we are going to use alongside with our smartphone, which are GIMP and an Inkscape. Both of them are open source and freeware, so you can download it and donate to the developers if you want to improve them in some other way. Also complementing what I'm going to show and talk here are in the V room at 6 today, the origami photography by Gerwin Sturm, and at the A room at 18:30, diagramming with Inkscape by Wojciech Wurzik. Sorry. Well, the hardware section is quite simple. We are going to need an indirect light, so please do not take the paper out in the sun. It's going to burn the color of the paper. Our smartphone, PC, the mouse is not needed really, but it's quite helpful, mainly because most of the programs nowadays use the hotkeys alongside with the mouse. So zooming, panning, and panning are used alongside the scroll part of the mouse, which is not into the touchpad of a laptop, for example. And of course, the paper sheets. The software, as I told, is Inkscape and GIMP. But alongside, I also use two another ones, which is batch file renamer, which is this one. The one I use is Windows only, but there are many other options in Linux systems, and in MacOS natively you can change in batch the names of the files. Why I say that? Because when you take photos with your mobile, it just takes the ISO standard naming, which is quite a nightmare to work with. So I would like to number them as the steps of the diagram. I've designed it 1, 2, and etc. And at the end, Inkscape cannot, at the moment, export multi-pages PDFs. So you have to export 1 PDF for each page. So you have to use a merger for PDFs. I've shown here the PDF Sun Basic, which is freeware and works in all the operating systems. So in the part of the photographing, we have to take only care of 3 things. We have to hide our hands and the clothespins we use to keep the model still. We are going to photograph in the steps we want to. We can also use a flattener, like a mylar or some not very reflective surface to flatten it if we want the model to be completely flat when we take the photograph. And in case we cannot use neither of them, we can tilt ourselves to take the photo right directly on top of the step we are going to diagram. So if the paper is like moving, we move alongside the paper. It's not needed, though many people may think so, to have a perfect photograph. In fact, this is my normal pulse. That's how I take the photographs. And mainly because the modern smartphones have so high quality, even if it's blurry, at the end, when you record or take away the waste background, the photo will look perfectly clean on 300 dots per inch printing, which is a professional printing standard. Now, before photographing, we have to planning the diagram. Why so? Because if the paper is double-sided, we can use different approaches to make the diagram, but we have to optimize it because less photos means we have to retouch less, we can speed up the process very much. These two diagrams shows the same result. In the first one, we would need to take two different photos, one for one side and one for the other. We could reuse the first one for the third step, but we needed two photos. Meanwhile, in the last step, which is the same, we only require to work with one photo. So that's another way to optimize the whole process, to make it quick. The idea is to reduce the number of steps while trying to be clear and concise, of course. These are some examples of the process. Each of my diagrams, which are 30, 40 steps, does take me 1 hour and a half, 2 hours to do completely, from taking the photos, just right to finish the diagram by itself. Of course, another way we need, for example, we reuse the photos in the first one, and the ray, which is in the green one, the photos, the steps number 4, 5, and 6 are just the same image, with drawing on top of it the different steps. Also, another way to speed up the process is using hotkeys. When I started using computers, it was just a blank screen. There wasn't even a mouse invented. So we have to rely on pressing hotkeys, which is a combination on the keyboard to speed that process. And also we are going to need to create a template. We are going to create it in Inkscape. The template I use, which I'll talk more about later, is basically all the symbols used in the origami models at the left side of the page, and then I can copy-paste instead of drawing again arrows, adding the markers to the end, and etc. I will talk more in depth in a moment. Now, when we take a photograph with our mobile, the photo is going to be a JPG, probably. Or if we use a nice real camera, we may have a raw image. In any way, we are going to work with two types of images, which are vector and raster ones. But we also need to take in care that using open standards will provide us with more time-proof safety of our work. For example, in the vector side, we may need to use the SVG and PNG standards. But we also may take use of those lossless format, the GPJ, because it reduces our PDF size. When we are going to send to a print our PDF, it's easier to send a 30 megabytes file than a 500 megabytes file. In fact, some printers will directly say to you, no, I can print this huge beast of a document. So another way to reduce the size is using GPJ. But the GPJ, as I said, is a loosey format, which means that we are going to lose the quality the more time or the more things we do to the image. There are some samples with different qualities. There's the Q, an 80%, 40%, and 20%, and the size, and final size downside. Of course, we are going to try to reach an equilibrium between if we want some artifacts in our image and our file size. The first one is the one I used. It's almost like perfect. You wouldn't be able to distinguish the quality, mainly because the file we are going to take with our current cameras are going to be 3,000 dots per inch, which is already industrial printing quality. So the small losses at 80% will reduce vastly the GPJ file size, while allowing us to work faster in the program. This is mainly the workflow. The workflow is, truth be told, 3 ways. You can use in some steps one of them, the second, or the third one. At the end, you are going to have the same result, but it will be different in the methodology. The first one is the fastest, and the last one is the slower. I always use the slower one because it gives me more, I do feel more realized when I know exactly that the result is going to be perfect. The fastest one, of course, is maybe perfect. Maybe the printer does not understand exactly how transparency should work around a background on a flat image. So they have their pros and cons. We are going to see each one individually. For the first one, we take our photos directly. In Inkscape, we are going to draw the shape of the paper we want to use, and we are going to use one option which is called clipping, which is going to hide what it is not inside of the closed shape. But at the end, the PDF that is going to be generated is the original image file size. So at the end, you are going to see if the image is 5 megabytes, just that part of the diagram is going to be 5 megabytes. If you have 20 steps, the final PDF is going to be huge. It's the fastest. If you're going to usually locally to print it internally or to some friends, it's a good approach. But if you're going to send it to a printer, it is not. The second workflow, we are going to use Inkscape. But we are going to just try to reduce the file size without working on it with GIMP. So the only thing we are going to do is going to remove the unneeded part of the background and save it in GPJ at 80% quality, which are the options that I will be shown later. Then we redo the same. We draw the shape of the form and apply a clipping on top of it. The file size is, instead of 5 megabytes, is 0.13 megabytes. It's 90% less of the size of the file. This is a good approach. It's also fast enough to be sent to the printer, but clipping itself has its downsides, which is that some printers have some problems with the border, and they introduce some noise around it. I have a printed version of my textbook, and I can show you to you later that you can see like a shadow around the clipping. And the third one, the slowest one, which is the one I use, we take the photo and we completely remove the background in GIMP, export it, and work on it with Inkscape and generate the PDF. The image at the end, we can select two types. We can choose between the GPJ, which is the original size, or we can choose to PNG. Why PNG? Well, PNG is much weighter, almost like the workflow number 2, but it has transparency, which GPJ does not. So if we're going to have the steps too close or overlapping, we need the transparency that open source format is going to allow us. Again, here are all the workshops and the workflows, and we can see the different insights and the downside. In the first step, we had a file which is the step of almost 8 megabytes. The second one for 0.13, and then of almost nothing. So it depends on how you want to approach and how many steps do you require to create your best approach. I normally use only the third one because I'm fast enough with the hotkeys and the mouse. But using directly the first one, which is the fastest, is also okay. Now we are going to talk about GIMP. Here I'm going to show you how to correctly set up the program, the options, and which are the hotkeys we are going to use. And these are the only ones we need. We don't need to learn all the quirks and issues with the program, because it's a huge program for photo editing. So it's not meant to just cut out and do some small things. But it's fast enough, it's free, it's open source, and allows us to work really fast. After the setup, we are to go the hotkeys, as I said, and the workflow, we are going to use it. And some notes on the scale down from the original photo size and the export options. The setup is quite easy. It's in the menu options. You can find it. It does not have, it's Control Shift P. We only need to adjust if we want the resource consumption, which is the big red square. It's optional. I have never changed it because the default settings are quite safe and quite fast for any modern operating system and hardware. But we need to check that the OpenCL is disabled. It's a work in progress. It's an option that will expect when finished the quality and the time required for some operations in a high degree. But none of those operations we are going to use. The only one would be reduce, but it's fast enough at the moment, so it's just risky to activate OpenCL just to gain some milliseconds to work with it. And in the case that, as many of you should have, color management in your computer, some color profiles specifically to your screen, to see the real colors when printing. Downside on the left side, down the red rectangle, there's the color management section where you can select your ICC profile, for those who knows which is. Then, for speed up the process, we are going to set the default export file. If you are going to choose to export always to GPA, just select into the drop-down menu that option. If we are going to use PNG, just select it, and you don't have to write it, because GIMP, when you export, it always asks you for a image file extension instead of having to select from a drop-down menu. So if automatically it puts the extension, you don't have to waste time trying to look for it. Also, there is a scaling, because we are going to reduce all modern smartphones takes images so huge that is unuseful, and it's a waste of resources to work with. When we are into scaling down, there are many algorithms you can use. They have changed recently the default algorithm. Before that was length 3. Now they have chosen no halo, which means that when you are going to reduce, it's going to use the most advanced algorithm to produce no artifacts into the original image. For those interested, there's also an option, it's not shown here, to work instead of an 8-bit images, to work into an 16th-bit image, which reduce to 0 any artifacts when you are going to scaling up and down, and will not shift any colors at all. But it takes a much longer time to process. That's why I didn't talk about working in a 16-bit image space instead of the default A1. These are the last options, the general ones which everyone may want, change the interface language, and the 2 hidden most important options of GIMP. I will talk later what are the hotkeys I use for because I'm left-handed. But these options are should be in all programs. It's called dynamic hotkeys. Dynamic hotkeys, it lets you, when you place your mouse pointer on top of one menu option, to press a hotkey and it automatically will apply it. So you don't have to look for that option. What are the hotkeys? I'm using too many times this option in the menu. Well, I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-W, and it automatically applies such a default option. So it's as an option. I think it should be set on by default, but it's not. And it's quite saving if you want to change in some manner. Well, I decided I don't like this hotkey. You go to menu, press the new hotkey, and it's changed. You don't have to go to the preferences menu and look for that option. Now, these are the hotkeys I use. You may use the other ones you want, but this let me to work with mainly the left hand for the hotkeys, the mouse to be moving around, and be able to use the mouse scroll for zooming and panning. This is all that we are going to do with the images in Inkscape. We're rotating them clockwise or content-wise 90 degrees because there are no image loss. We do not want to rotate it another to make it straight, because that would mean that the pixels in the original image are modified. We will create some artifacts into the image. We can rotate it perfectly digitally on Inkscape. That does not introduce any artifact at all. So we only want to rotate it to make it comfortable to work with the image. Then we have the options to change the levels of the image. If the image we have taken is too dark or too blur with the light, we can adjust, or even as there are some color shifts, we can adjust somehow those options in the levels section. The B key, which and the third workflow will allow us automatically to take out all the background we have deleted previously. And because we are going to scale down constantly all the images, if we assign a hotkey to that option, it will save us and speed the process up to. Then there are the default ones that we may use in some scenarios. The free select tools and the invert selection and delete are only used in the third workflow, the slowest one. Those are used to select the form of the paper we want to save, invert the selection, and delete the background. In the other two workflows are not needed. So the only one we would need to be taking care of is the export one. Zooming and panning, obviously, is something we always must do to be careful. If only we are going to clean up in the third workflow the image background. If not, we are only going to use it to cut the image in the second workflow. This would be the third workflow complete. We have our source, we rotate it with KL, then with the select tool with zooming and panning, which is the F key, and then click, click, click until we close the shape. Then invert the selection with Control I, delete the background, we press the B key, which is crop, and it automatically will crop all the unneeded space, and press V, and we scale down the image. So with 8 different keys, we have save our time instead of moving the mouse around, looking for the options into the menus, and having the When we export with Control E, here are the options we have. On the left side, we have the scale options, which are the important ones. The top ones are the width and height of the image, which is, truth be told, unneeded for us. But downside, there's the X and Y resolution, which is the printing resolution of the image. those must be set to 300 dots per inch. Normal printers, up until some years ago, they required 200 dots per inch. But nowadays, many printers are selecting 300s. So to save our work of any problem in the near future, just set 300 dots per inch, and it will reduce the file size. On the right side, we have the export options if we choose GPJ or PNG. PNG. The PNG first part is needed is a lossless format, which means it will not lose the image. The original image will not lose quality at all. It's an open source format. But if we start with GPA, the format will lose some quality. This is where you set up your quality options. The ones I used always, which I showed before, is an 80%, which is in the top right side, the smallest square. I put an 80, and the chroma is an advanced option to reduce the image quality to 422, which means horizontally I'm going to lose half of the color information to allow us to reduce the file size. You can also use 444, which is completes color spectrum, and you will have no loss of image color, but the file size will be huge. That's why GPJ was designed as a lossy format, because you lose information, but you gain in speed and in size. Now, the other program we are to use after we have cleaned our image with GIMP is Inkscape. Inkscape is a vectorial image drawing. It's designed mainly for drawing, but it can be easily adapted. And in the near future, they're developing an option to make custom panels, so we can create a custom origami panel section with the options we use most. But at the moment, they are quite accessible, and it's quite fast to work with. I'm going to show you the correct setup, which no one so far in the videos I've seen over the internet has ever shown how to set up correctly Inkscape and the graphic user interface. Then we are going to explain about the template I create to speed up the workflow, the hotkeys. Some issues is an open source program, but lately they don't have enough developers, so they have some problems with some issues, quirks that may annoy some people, but do not affect at all to the end result. It's going to be a perfect PDF with no problem whatsoever. The workflow with the Inkscape and the options for a scale and export. These two are the twin golden goose of the configuration in Inkscape. On the left side, you have the bounding box to use. Mainly because Inkscape is a drawing program, by default it bounds to the, how it's called, to the visual bounding, which means in the middle one you have the difference between the both of them. In visual bounding, we try to join two lines. It will stick to the width of the line. So it may be in the center, in one corner, in another corner. So when you are drawing and keep drawing and modifying, the errors you may have with the lines not connected properly to the place they should be will create some distortion that may be really, really annoying. So if we set up to geometric bounding, it will only link to the nose or the middle of line of any other bounding option, another bounding options we may set up. But it will not try to bound to the width of the line. So if we change the line width, it wouldn't be any problem at all. And his sister option is the snap. Right now it is hidden in that menu option. It means that when we are, if we press the Control hotkey, when we are drawing a line, instead of being a free movement, it will move on steps. In origami, we always draw if we are in box splitting 45, if we are using a 22.5 degrees, we can set the steps we want to use here. So we can only by pressing the key Control, we can control the angle perfectly instead of having to fight or searching for references. This will help us to speed up the process very much. But at the moment, that's why I say they're working on that option to make custom menus. It's hidden inside the preferences. Another two shows the normal ones and where to change the language of the program. And also on the right side, there's because SVG is, in truth, is a document file you can open with a notepad editor, and it's a text file. It's not an image by itself. There may be some garbage left when we remove something or add. If there are some information left that may be making the file too big for our tastes. So activating this option, when we choose to clean up the document, which is an option in the file menu, will remove all the unneeded information and make the work with the file faster. Then these are the export options on the left. You can see on top of that there is an export option, but it's not the true export option. Inkscape has been a drawing program. There have an option to export, but it will export an image instead of a PDF. When you want a PDF, you have to save as PDF. So you can put any number because it does not affect us at all. It's not the real export option we want. Downside of it, there is the import file, the import section. The import section is quite important for us. It allows us, Inkscape, you have two options: to incorporate the image inside the document as a base64 file format, or link the original file. That way, our working file or our SVG is going to be smaller, faster to open and to work with. So we select to link always the images with low quality or medium quality. It depends on how you look, but it's only going to be visual. When it exports with maximum quality. It's only for speeding up the program. But if we choose to import a 300 dots per inch directly, we know that when we import the image, the size it is the perfect size for printing. If we make the image larger, we are going to lose quality. If we make the image smaller, we are going to have much quality in the image. As a normal, as a rule of three, you may say, 100, well, I'll talk about that later. And the golden egg. We have the twin golden goose sisters. This is the golden egg. The interface, the default interface, is meant for drawing, but there are some dialogues, it's called, which are panels with some options. So we are going to open all of them. No, sorry, I'm talking about the next, sorry. This one is, we draw a line, for example, and we set up, we want the width of the line, the default step, size, colors, whatever. If we double click on the option in the tool in the left menu, it automatically opens us the options menu. There's an option called this tool on a style, which is right in the middle. So selecting the object we have created with the setup we want, we change the defaults so we don't have to constantly say, no, the default lines are 02 pixels or 02 millimeters. So we can set up directly the the options. So each new line we draw is going to be perfectly in the size we have selected for our work. And this is the part I was talking about, sorry, before earlier, which is the interface, the general user interface. The problem with it is not meant, it's meant for drawing, so it automatically opens no dialogues at all, and you have the full space to work with. But there are three menus that have so many tools really needed for us, which are to open them, to open those dialogues, I use a mnemotechnique, which is Mafalda, the character created by Kino. So I press Ctrl-Shift-M, and it opens the transform dialog, then the A, aligned and distribute, and F, fill and stroke, which include options to distribute, organize. There are many that are very useful for us when we are working on diagramming on top of our images. When you open the dialogues, by default, I don't know why, the developers have not been able to tell me why either. They, instead of being a stack one on top of the other, there are two that come as stock. So you grab it out of the zone, it will become an independent window, and then you move it again, and now they are all of the three of them open at the same time. It's a quirk that the program has that no one has been able to tell me why it behaves that way. After that, you don't need to change it anymore because Inkscape automatically saves the workspace. So the next time you open the program, it's going to remember that you have those dialogues open and the way they are. So now we can start creating start creating our template. Why I say it's needed? Well, truth be told, it's not needed, but if you are going to create your own style of diagramming, you may want to have the lines of some specific size, some kind of arrow, some kind of rotate symbols, or whatever. So you create them at the left side of the page, and then you have the workspace to create the diagram. Because at the moment, it's programmed for after the next release, the 1.1 version, when have multi-page support, PDF support, it will be easier. But at the moment, it does not. So how do I create a multi-page document? Well, some people create multiple SVG files. I do not. I just set up a grid that is the same size of the paper, so you can see ghosts pages to the right side of the first one. I create a frame and I slide it the page width, so I have a new frame and I know where exactly my page, the part of the printed page, resides. So I can create as many pages as I want just by duplicating and sliding a frame. Well, these are the options to adjust the template. Of course, set the paper size we want. Is with Ctrl-Shift-D. It's also in the first menu file. And where to create the grid I talk about, but be careful always to put the units correctly. By default, as it is a drawing program, the units are pixels. So you may be thinking you are putting your paper size when you are putting in pixels units instead of millimeters of inches. Now the hotkeys are also quite limited. We do not use too many hotkeys. Flip an object. If we take a photo and want to do the other side, was flip horizontally or vertically, or free rotation, which is the select and transfer object, which is F1 key. Inkscape works in this way. When you click once, you can enlarge or reduce the image or distort horizontally or vertically the image. When you click on it again, you can rotate it. It's a two-side tool, which is quite useful. If you press the key, the control key modifier, with it makes it like with the steps, it fixes. We want to rotate it. If you set up the steps 40 degrees, if we press the control key, it will rotate over the whole object at 40 degrees. Also, one thing which is quite important and quite helpful for us, so instead of having to fight to place a line to 90 degrees of another, I don't know the angle it has, we move the center of rotation. We draw the line, move the center of rotation to one corner, and then we rotate, selecting the snap option to the line, and it will automatically snap, allowing us to rotate then 90 degrees directly without having to know the first line original angle. That's why moving the center of rotation of a file is a way to speed up our process. To draw the lines that we are going to need is only the B line, because we are going to use Bezier lines, which are the easier ones to work with. In case you want to draw some curves and some other lines with different shape on top of the photographs. Oh, yes. No, I'm finishing, by the way. Then F2 to edit the path, and zoom and panning, which also use the mouse wheel. These are some of the queries of Inkscape, which is working with layers and the order of the objects. The difference between group and combine, when we group objects, for example, all the mountain lines, it will not reduce the file size. When we combine them, we say it's in a single object, so all the other information is left, and the file size will be smaller. There are two options, mask and clip. Mask uses when you use a solid surface, it shows what is the solid color behind the solid color. When you use select clip, it will show what is inside of a circle closed surface. This is the option I use, which is the fastest one. The normal modifiers are no any problems, Control-Alt-Shift. When you press them and you have one tool selected, at the bottom of the program, it will have an information telling you what it is going to happen if you click after pressing that key. So it's an easy way to know how is changing the behavior. Snapping is the percentage symbol. Is for snapping to the corners, to the center lines. In some cases, you may want to disable it because it allows us to move faster the objects into the page. It has some bugs, annoying for me, some clipboard issues when you copy and paste from different documents. Instead of copying them vectorially, transforming into raster images, just close the program, open it again, and it works. There is a caption always bug sometimes when you are going to press T for writing text. It thinks that if you have the caps on, it thinks you're pressing Shift-T, which is incorrect. Just close the program, open it again, and it will work. Some graphic zoom glitches and artifacts that can be avoided, but it's not too much. The arrows markers, when we include the arrows at the end of the lines, it slows down the program a bit. You can transform them into an object, so the program will run faster. And you can create custom line styles, but it's a nightmare. So it's always preferable to select the ones that they have and adapt it with the options they allow us to shift the pattern or make it bigger or smaller. This is the Inkscape workflow. We take the photo, rotate it, scale it. The image will not lose any quality at all. That's why we can do a free rotation here instead of doing it in GIMP. We draw the lines on top of it, combine them, add text. We go to the file cleanup to reduce, to destroy any garbage that may be there. And then for each, if we are going to use a multi-page document, We select all objects, export to PDF, and on the top of Inkscape, there's an option of the position. We plus minus the page width, in a slide everything to our next page. Export again, slide everything the page width, export, up until we have all our pages exported. Then we merge them into a single PDF. So that would be the general workflow. We work with a photo, clean it, importing into the diagram, adding the lines on top of them, and exporting into the PDF, merging them together. These are some tips and tricks, some general ones, which are the Alt Tab, some from GIMPs, and some from Inkscape. As I said, this file is going to be freely open on a link in a G Drive, Google Drive, so anyone can download it and read everything I'm talking about. It's written also into the presentation. Well, thank you very much. Yes. Well, this is a video showing. I try to slow down a bit of the steps because I do using the hotkeys is quite fast. This would be the diagram I created. I optimized it to use only 6 photographs to create the double trident for 10 steps. So I avoided to take 4 photographs, which means the process is quite sped up. The first one can be used for steps 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7, and the rest one are specific views that need a specific photos. The GIMP part, this is going to show you, well, there's the keyboard and the mouse keys on the downside. So I'm going to do the form of the paper, just clicking. Well, you can move around freely before if you want to adjust it. And when you click on the last one, it closes the shape. Thus we press Control-I, delete the font, B the background, V the export options. We have the scale first to our size at 3 dots per inch, and put it a name, the one we want. I said you can save the default option, so you click directly in Load Defaults. You don't have to write every time 80% quality and 422 in GPJ export options. I don't want to change the changes of the original file. And then I go. Then we move, when the video wants, to the template. I'm going to use the third workflow. I've cleaned already the image. When I drag and drop the image inside of GIMP, you can say automatically it's set to link the dots per inch from file, which is set up to 300 in GIMP, so it will be printer's quality. And the rendering, for me, I prefer a quality view, but it does not affect to the export options. It only takes more resources of the program to show it perfectly. I don't like to see everything perfect. As I've reduced the image file, the quality is more than 300. It's probably now around 640. I'm going to reuse the image, but it's wrong to copy them at the beginning. So we are going to delete them. The idea is to create one, and we are going to reuse the lines we have already drawn into the next step, so we don't have to redraw them. I'm going to make this one is a division in 18th part, so I'm going to draw on the borders and then draw 15 copies with Control D, because duplicate, Control D, 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 15 times. So I select all the lines, and that's why we open the dialogues of fill of the align and distribute. When I select distribute automatically, I edit with F2 the nodes and distribute them proportionally. So I have already done in less than 1 minute a 16 vertical grid. You can adjust if you want. There's manually one of each by one of the nodes, and you can select them. That was one of the graphical glitches. And there's an horizontal option that puts them all automatically. That's why those menus, those dialogues are so important for us, because they help us to speed up the process. The border, the extreme ones, I don't want them, so I delete them. Well, I made some small adjustments. Now I copy this style, I combine all the files, and press Ctrl-Shift-B, and it pastes the style of the file. That's why I do not only need one of the files with the styles I want to speed up the process as much as possible. Instead of copying the formats and changing them each time, Ctrl-Shift-V, it will change them all together. Now I'm creating the style for the creases, which I forgot in this default file. This is default template, sorry. And I'm making the grid, well, the units I want, more or less. Well, I'm pressing Control because I set up the snap tool to 22.5 degrees. So it allows me to know that it is a true 45 degrees. Well, I drew a marker. I have selected to use the center of the rotation of the file to allow me to use them as references. Well, I use this. You have seen that when I resize the first circle, the other ones change together. You can copy normally or duplicate virtually. When you duplicate virtually, when you change one of the objects, the other ones will adapt to. So you have to be careful. One is Control-D and the other is Alt-D. If it's duplicated with LD, yes? Yeah. The snapping goes away because when you resize, you will have to readapt the other ones. That's why you have to be careful between duplicating with Control-D or creating a mirror, a replica of the original with Alt-D. Alt-D would makes you an image with less lighter. It will take less resources. That's why in some cases, when you are not going to resize or you are not going to modify the object, it's better to use Alt-D instead of Control-D. 4 minutes. Okay. Well, duplicating the lines, selecting them, and with Control-K, and combining them into a single file. Yes, Control-D, Control-K, and Control-Shift-V, and paste the style. Normally, when I want to speed up the process, I always use the Valley fold, because this is the easiest for everyone to understand. So I tend to avoid using many arrows for the problem I talked with Inkscape. In some cases, it is preferable to have them and then convert them to objects and remove the markers from them, so it's not an object. Anyways, I'm the way I'm tuning and panning. I'm duplicating again, and I'm going to, because this is where I talk about working with levels. The valley falls and in the top, so if I try to merge it directly with the horizontal, the vertical lines, they are going to use the style of the top ones. So I send it to the background with End key, and then when I press Control-K, they mix with the style of the top one. That's why working is some kind of different. There, to change the middle line, what I did was instead ungroup all of the files and deselect just that line to change the style. Copy and paste the lines, and that's another step done. For the next one, I duplicate the numbers, or you can, in your template, if you want, you can have them created already. In this one, I did not. Well, so That's the problem, to change everything on the last minute. Now I'm going to add this step that will introduce what we have done in the previous one, which is not going to be shown. But it's like that. It's just drawing on top of the image. You see that it tried to snap to the border of the image, so I had to deselect the snapping option with the percentage symbol to be able to click onto the corner of the drawing. So I don't know why it hasn't recorded it. I'm trying to draw a horizontal. There it is. It's the thin red line. Now that is my line, I duplicate it, mirror it. That's why I thought it's another interesting tool for us. And then selecting the two files, I can adjust it, and merging the nodes, I convert it into a single object. So when I apply one of the styles, it can be applied to the whole object. I duplicate it here and cut it the vertical creases, so I can remove just the top one, the top side. This is done with, is in the object menu, it's Control-Shift-Alt-7, and it will cut directly all the set. So it's a fast way, instead of moving down the nodes, you cut the lines and then get rid of whatever you don't want. Here I'm combining just what I want to left as creases, and I'm just selecting what I want to change from this line into mountain or valley fold, into this step. When I do group all the files together. To select directly an object inside a group, you can press the Control key, and you click on the object inside that group instead of having to double click to open the group and select the object. Directly with Control, you can click directly on the object even though it's inside a group. Well, adding text with the hotkey, and that would be more or less, well, basically the rest is adding some more lines that may not be so. Okay, well, here I deselect it, duplicate it again, deselect, ungroup it, uncombine, sorry, the downsign lines, and change with Ctrl-Shift-V the styles. So it's basically a many repeating process. So knowing how to apply the hotkeys directly will speed up very much the process. Let me here adding some horizontal lines. And here this is. I'm selecting two nodes, and there's an option to draw the line between those two nodes, so you don't have to go drawing and clicking manually on each of the corners. And that would be basically all the options and keys you have to use with GIMP. Now the other part is going at your rhythm and try to expect the process, understanding and remembering the hotkeys you have to press. And that would be and that's exporting to PDF there. When we export, which is save a copy as a copy too, because if we try to export, it's export a PNG file. We select the PDF extension, and we will ask us for the raster, the resolution for rasterization and dots per inch. We must also be sure that to use 300, sorry for the delay. And it will create a PDF with 300 dots per inch, perfect for printing. And that would be all. Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay. Do you have any question? Is there time? Yeah, okay, sorry for the delay. Sorry very much. Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry, I've been a bit slower because I lose half of my glasses and reading the notes making it harder. Yes, I was hit by a man on drugs for defending two girls that he was harassing. Yesterday at 10:13 in the night at the Plaza España. Well, so that's why I lose. So reading the notes is quite difficult.